let's get going here. I want to tell you guys something, actually. I got a great Maisa to tell you within our Maisa over here. So, like we were just speaking about, one of the attributes of Tamimus is to always be connecting to Hashem, and through that we're always seeing Hashem in everything that we do, right? And we're always thanking Hashem. We're always knowing that it's the derech of a good Breslever, of course, of any Jew, right? To be talking to Hashem, to be aware of Hashem, to be aware that there's a relationship going on, right? So sometimes we have to make a lot of effort, and sometimes things hit us in the face. Like we get smacked in the face with some kind of hashgacha pratis that is unbelievable. But even that, if we're not in the right mind frame, we can just shut it down. So listen to this story. This just happened to me tonight. It happened to me over the last month. But this amazing thing happened tonight that I still can't get over. It's I hope I can tell it over well enough. So everybody knows I have a wine company, right? I make wine. So I got an email from someone in Vancouver about a month ago. And this person said, I'm going to be coming into Toronto to visit my children, my son and his wife. And, we love your wine. Maybe we can come, and we're going to be in Niagara-on-the-Lake visiting. Do you have a restaurant? Can we have some food? Can we have a tour? What's going on? So we happen to be reworking our winery at the moment, and we're not offering tours. So I was about to respond to this person, and I looked at the name, and the last name of the person, she has a hyphenated name, stuck in my mind. I was like, this sounds familiar. So I showed it to my wife, and she says, oh, this lady is, I don't know what the real exact relationship is, but it's my father's first cousin's daughter. And so I was like, wow, that's pretty wild. So I emailed the lady back, and I was like, I actually think that we might be related. And I told her the whole situation. And it turns out that when my wife's a doctor for those who don't know, when she was still in med school, her last year of med school, she did an elective in Vancouver, and she went and spent some time with this lady's father, who's now in his 90s. And she actually had a Shabbos dinner with this lady way back then, like 21 years ago. So I was like, wow, amazing. So that's not the story. so that's already exciting. So anyway, they came into town, and we went out to have dinner with them tonight, before this year, and so we're all sitting around having dinner. It was my family, and this lady and her husband, and her son and his family. So I'm sitting beside her son, and we're schmoozing through the dinner and talking about a few things to do with business and just interesting things. Comes out that we both have a little bit of knowledge and interest in Canadian Jewish history, which is a very fine subject, right? And so we were talking about where people came from. I'm from Winnipeg, and the immigrants that came to Winnipeg, they were offered land. If they came to Canada, they were offered land that they would be able to take a hold of and claim and start a farm. A lot of Jews came to the middle of Canada with this in mind, and most of them failed because they were not good farmers. Or in Manitoba's case, they didn't get good land. Like it was virtually impossible to be successful. So he's telling me how his family, they got a farm in Saskatchewan, and they ended up doing what they did, and then they moved to Vancouver, Saskatchewan, Vancouver. And I was like, yeah, it's really amazing. And talking about how there used to be a guide for Jewish soldiers in the Canadian Army about wherever there is in Canada where there's a Jew in a town somewhere, who they were, where they were, so you could go and get a kosher meal from them. And maybe, if you had to have a Seder, you could go to them, whatever. Talking about all these little small towns and how there was Jews in little pockets in the middle of nowhere. So I tell him, something really amazing happened. This was very interesting with these small Jewish areas, that right in the first few months of COVID, 2020, in the summer of 2020, here in Canada, and like in many places, you weren't able to go anywhere. Like you couldn't travel, you couldn't fly. It was when everyone was on board with restrictions, right? Back in the very beginning. Most people anyway. And And so we were like, what are we going to do? There's nothing to do. It's the summertime. So we decided, my family, we're going to go on a road trip. Where are we going to go? We're going to go on a road trip to Nova Scotia on the East Coast. And we're going to rent an Airbnb. And we're just going to hang out there on the East Coast in an Airbnb. And actually, they weren't letting people even drive through New Brunswick at that time. We had to get special permission to just drive straight through New Brunswick. Anyway, so we go there. Fine. And it's a nice place. It's on the coast, and there's a big forest beside me. It was lovely. I got to spend a lot of time in the forest. It was nice. And so I go out for a drive one time to get some supplies, whatever. And I'm driving down this road out in the middle of nowhere. It's rural, completely rural. As I'm driving by, I see a cemetery which looks like there's Hebrew letters. And I look a little closer, and sure enough, it's a Jewish cemetery in the middle of nowhere called Achidas Achim. Something like, I think that's what it's called. And I was like, wow, I gotta check this out. Like, how could it be? I'm in the middle of nowhere, Nova Scotia, Canada. It can't be. So I get out, and I'm looking around, and it says cemetery. The grass is cut. Someone takes care of it around there. So I look around, I see these matzevas, big tombstones, and I'm mind blown. I start davening, I say Tikkun Klali, and I'm like, wow, amazing hashgacha pratis Hashem that you put me to this place. I'm just driving out in the middle of nowhere. Thank you, Hashem. What hashgacha pratis? And so I take some pictures of the place, and I'm telling this guy beside me, our mutual interest in these little Canadian Jewish sites, telling about it. And I pull out, and I'm like, take a look at these pictures. And I flip through the pictures, and I'm like, wait a second, this tombstone has your same last name. And he looks at it, and he says, this person's name is Lazarus Wener. He says, that's my great-great-great-grandfather. That's my great-great-grandfather. These people that we just connected with out of the blue, and we had a dinner together, and we started talking about this interest. And I had the picture. I was at his great-great-grandfather's tomb, out in the middle of nowhere that no one ever goes to. I showed it to his father who was there. This is his great-grandfather. And they were like, they were blown away. They couldn't believe it. And I am going out of my kelim. I'm like, what? I can't believe this. This is the most amazing hashgacha pratis. Like, how could you ever have any questions that the Rebbeinu Shalom Fürst der Welt runs the world, right? It's unbelievable. Like, the things that had to come together for this, it's mind-blowing. Like, it doesn't make sense. It makes perfect sense, of course. But what I wanted to say is that, first of all, sometimes Hashem just gives us something where He's like, oh yeah, don't worry, I'm going to show you. I'm behind everything, and you'll see, which is very nice. But I just wanted to tell you, I told this to one other person, and when I told them to, they were like, oh, what a coincidence. And I was like, what? That's what you, what a coincidence? That's not a coincidence. That's way, way beyond a coincidence. And the point being is that you can be faced with amazing things. You can be faced with Hashem right in front of you, but you can be a chacham. And you can choose not to see it. You can look away. You can tie it all to nature, to just happenstance, right? And this is one of the main differences between the Chacham and the Tam. So the Tam is seeing Hashem in everything.